What up, fam? I am Dr. De Luna, and you are listening to Drop It Like It's Doc podcast. Today, we're gonna be talking about sex, baby, and all the different things that could cause you to have painful sex. Not fun.
But it's more painful when you don't have any.
Touche. So fam, sex is fun, right? I think it's fun. You might not think it's fun. And if you don't think it's fun, it might be because it's causing you pain. So I want to talk about some of the different causes for pain during sex, and also some of the different underlying things that you could do and investigate to find out the root cause of yours. Because let's be real, sex should be a source of pleasure. But for many of us, we were taught for some sick reason that sex is supposed to be painful, especially if you are a female-bodied person that has a vagina. You know, it's quite intimate for someone to put their body inside of yours. That process should not be painful. Of course, it's going to cause sensation, but pain is very different than pleasure. So, you know, if that's your kink, go for it, but that's not what we're talking about today. So your vagina is actually perfect. Just want to throw that out there. If you've ever been told that your vagina is not perfect, you have been lied to significantly. And it is perfect. And a healthy, perfect vagina is one that has a pH of about 4 to 4.5. And the reason that this pH is so important is because the pH is inhibiting things from overgrowing. Things like yeast, things like Gardnerella, things like different types of bacteria that can completely influence the tissue itself. And your vaginal tissue, if it becomes inflamed, that is something that you can feel with penetrative sex because there's something rubbing inside of you. And if you have tissue that is inflamed or unhappy, you will feel it. So we have to start with what a healthy vagina would be, and then we'll work our way back from that as to things that could happen in your body, which could show up as painful sex. And first, like I was saying, that pH should be around 4 to 4.5. The way that we have that pH is actually a mixture of hormonal input and metabolic shifts related to the different microbes within your vagina. So your body makes estrogen. Yes, it does. It should. Yes, it should. And when you have estrogen actually releases glycogen from the vaginal walls. Glycogen is a storage form of sugar. Just pause to think about that. Your vagina is storing sugar, your sweet little honey box, like beautiful. So estrogen is telling that vaginal wall to release glycogen. Glycogen is then being broken down by lactic acid. Just kidding. Lactobacillus to make lactic acid. That's why they're called lactobacillus, because they can make lactic acid. This is going to shift the pH to make it so things like bacteria don't overgrow. Things like yeast infections don't take place. So you can probably guess that if you have a hormone imbalance, that process might not happen. So this is actually why if you're on hormonal birth control, or if you're in perimenopause or in menopause, or have some type of hormonal issue going on with estrogen talking to your vaginal wall, you could have painful sex purely just because the pH is off. But of course, you can also have painful sex if you don't have enough lactobacillus in there. This can happen from antibiotic use. It absolutely can. Have you ever taken antibiotics for a UTI and then had a yeast infection a week later? That is so common. And the reason why that is common is because the antibiotics are like a bomb to your entire microbiome, and they can kill off some of the bacteria that are creating a happy environment in there. Some ways to tell if your pH is off is if you have some interesting discharge. So know that your vagina should make discharge. It should. It's usually white, clear, does not have a smell. If it starts to smell, if it starts to get gray, if it starts to get bubbles in it and foamy, if it starts to get chunky like cheese, that's a sign of an infection. And also, if you never had discharge, and if you started having like green, yellow discharge after a sexual encounter, know that men, penises in general, these peenies, they can hide a lot of secrets. Yes, they can. And they hide STDs too fucking well. So it is really easy for someone with a penis to give you just about any STD. They will not show symptoms, so we can't always blame them. Like maybe they didn't know. Maybe they did though, those sick fucks. But maybe they didn't know. And then now you have this weird discharge coming out of you, and that's why you're having painful sex. That could be an STD. So all of those are things that you need to be on the lookout for. But say that you have a happy vaginal pH. You don't tend towards infection, but you know that tissue is still angry and inflamed. There's a couple things that we definitely need to address that could be going on. So first, do you have pain superficially or pain deep? And the way that you would know this is, do you have pain on insertion, at the beginning of insertion? Or are things pretty good until you enter certain positions and you feel a deeper pain with insertion of a penis, which I hope is big enough that you feel it inside of you? Yes? Okay, great. So if you are feeling pain at the insertion point, that is called vulvodynia, which essentially just translates to pain at the insertion point of the vulva. And that tissue around the vulva can become very inflamed because it is sensitive to so many different things. That tissue can be influenced by anything inflammatory. So say that inflammation is coming from within your body. Say you have an autoimmune disease that is influencing that tissue integrity. Say that you're wearing pads that are full of toxins and that's sitting right on your hoo-ha, giving it all sorts of toxins. That could be it. You know, because you probably listen to all my episodes because you are my favorite. You probably listened to the episode of Stop Putting Toxic People and Products Inside of Your Vagina. And we talked about a lot of these. All of those substances can irritate the tissue to the point that insertion is painful. Things with insertion can also show up if the pelvic floor is out of balance. So you have this basket of muscles that are holding your pelvic organs up in your body. So they are what you contract when you are trying to hold in your pee or your poop, right? Like you can squeeze them and you can feel that happen. That is your pelvic floor. And those are all muscles and they truly do create these baskets around you. And if there is an imbalance in that basket, you will notice pain and it's usually a little bit more localized. But if that whole area is in spasm or tight, almost in a protective mechanism, you can have something called vaginismus, which means that those muscles are so tight that it's almost as if when you try to insert, it feels like you're hitting a wall. And that is truly the wall of your muscles. And I also want you to be aware that your pelvic floor muscles, they attach to your hips, they attach to your low back. So this can show up as hip stuff. This could show up as low back stuff, but it can all be related to your ability to relax and enjoy sex, which again, should be enjoyable. And I said the word relax, right? Because a lot of this can show up because you don't feel safe in your body. It would be silly for me to talk about why sex could be painful for you without addressing trauma. Your body is so smart and your body wants to protect you. And having sex with someone is one of the most intimate, vulnerable things that we will do with another person. Like, think about it. Kind of intense, but we love it. Well, I hope you love it. And if you are in pain or if you have any trauma, your muscles are going to contract to protect you, right? And if you can't relax into that experience, it will be uncomfortable without a doubt in my mind. So that is something that you definitely want to consider. That's why mind-body work is so important. And I'll talk about some recommendations when we get down the line in a little bit, but I did want to touch upon that could be something that you feel a lot. You can also have some different pain upon insertion just based on what we just talked about. You can have an overgrowth of certain bacteria that just make the whole area inflamed, in which you would feel it on insertion. That same inflammation sensation can start on insertion and also with the friction of penetration, right? Because that tissue itself, let me just pause and say also, have any of you tried to have sex when you were not lubricated? Did that feel good for you? No. It doesn't feel good for you. It probably hurts. It probably feels like burny and like you're ripping apart tissue because you are. And then you're probably gonna be sore because truly you are just rubbing tissue down. And that can happen absolutely with hormone imbalances. With low estrogen, that can happen because estrogen maintains the integrity of the muscles of your vaginal wall. It also maintains the elasticity of the vagina and the lubrication. So if you are low in estrogen, you will not be able to lubricate yourself in a way that sex feels good. So you know that I'm a fan of treating the root cause. I would want to know why you're not making estrogen. Of course, if you're in your perimenopausal or menopausal years, your hormones are going to shift and you're going to want support. But if you're in your reproductive years and if it's hard for you to find lubrication and for it to be comfortable for you, that's something that you want to look at because your hormones need some balancing. Could be an adrenal issue, it could be birth control, it could be a whole bunch of stuff. But estrogen is so important for that lubricative aspect, which feels a lot better when things are moist in there, not dry. We don't like that. So those are a lot of things that are penetrative or along the vaginal wall. But what if you feel pain deep or just in certain positions? I'll start there. Some of you don't believe me that the uterus is a floating organ. You know what? I love that. I love that you don't believe me because it brings me joy just watching all of you fight with each other in the comments. But your uterus is essentially a floating organ. See, you forgot that I said the word essentially in that little clip because it's being suspended by ligaments and things, but it can move. It can shift. It can move forwards, backwards, side to side. So if you don't have pain in every position, but in just certain ways in which your body is being held, that is when you have pain. It's probably something from your uterus where it's tilted. You can have an anteverted uterus, meaning that it shifted a little forward. You can have a retroverted uterus, meaning it shifted back. It could go side to side, up and down. And with that being said, a lot of the times with individuals whose uteruses are a little tilted, they will notice sensation when they are getting penetrated from behind and things like doggy. So if that is you, it will feel like a jolting sensation, right? The whole thing isn't painful, but then again, if your partner's lucky enough to be able to hit your cervix, then you might feel your body jolt and almost retract from that. And that is because you are hitting your womb. And you know, you could just choose a different position that doesn't do that. That's not necessarily an issue. If anything, you have a well-endowed partner. I am happy for you. But you can also then, this could show up with other things, right? Because it might not be that your uterus is tilted. It could be that there's something in there, like a uterine fibroid. Uterine fibroids are so common, fam. Uterine fibroids are growth within the uterus. They are benign. People hear the word growth and like, oh my God, I have cancer. No, you don't. It is benign. It's in the muscular layer most of the time of the uterus. So let me just paint this picture for you because you might be like, that's me. If you have uterine fibroids, you might just always feel a little bit bloated in your lower abdomen because again, there's like a small cantaloupe inside of your uterus growing that is responsive to hormones. And since it's responsive to hormones, it usually means that your periods are going to be very heavy, very painful, full of clots. You're one of those people that has to change your pad or your tampon every hour. And it's usually associated with just this fullness feeling in the pelvis. And that is, again, very common with hormone imbalances, usually exogenous and excess estrogen stimulation to the womb itself. So if that is you, you might feel that pressure sensation in a lot of positions or all the time. And it would feel like that. It would feel more so like a pressure. And that is something that you would want to work with your doctor on. You would want to work on balancing your hormones, decreasing inflammation. You would want to work on structural support. You would want to potentially get surgery to get one of those removed or a few of them. And with that being said, things like ovarian cysts can absolutely do this as well. Anything in that area can cause it. Endometriosis, 100%, because those are growths outside of the uterus, but a lot of the times they're around the uterus, they're in the lower abdomen, so they're still creating space. And when you have a penis inside of your body, just in case you've never had one, it creates a pressure, a beautiful pressure. And that pressure can cause you to feel full if there's a lot going on in the pelvic floor. So just want to throw that out there. Could be endometriosis, who knows? But if you have endometriosis, you're probably in exquisite pain throughout the month. And you've probably seen a doctor for it already. And that's something that I love to work on, by the way. So if you want to work on it with a naturopath, we got you. We got you. Other things that can cause pain would be, so say you had sex with Billy, that guy earlier who didn't tell you that he had an STD. He actually had gonorrhea, but he didn't want to tell you. And he also told you he was sleeping with no one else, but he's sleeping with so many other people and he refuses to wear a condom with you. First of all, that's basically sexual abuse. Just want to throw that out there. But fucking Billy and his dirty dick, fuck you. And you have sex. And now you have gonorrhea. And you're like, Billy, what the fuck? You told me that you didn't have any STDs. And he's like, you didn't ask me. Sorry. So now you have gonorrhea. But because you didn't think you had it, you thought you were being a good girl. You thought you were. Yes, you were. It's Billy's fault. We hate Billy. Anyway, now the gonorrhea has ascended. I know. It's so great. It's ascended from your vagina up into your uterus, through the fallopian tubes, maybe even to the ovaries. So now you might have pelvic inflammatory disease. I know. This is rare, but honestly, it's not as rare as it should be because if you don't treat something like an STD, it will ascend. Infections move and it's just gonna cause inflammation throughout your entire pelvis. Truly, that's why it's called pelvic inflammatory disease. This can impact your ability to have a baby in the future. It can impact your ability to just have happy, healthy periods because that chronic inflammation in your womb is causing structural changes. So as you can tell, I am a huge fan of safe sex. I am a huge fan. I kid you not, fam. When I was out and about in this world, having sex. I don't do that anymore. But when I would not have sex with someone unless they showed me that they had been STD tested, because I don't trust them. I do not trust the penis. I do not. They have a mind of their own and they don't care about you. So just want to throw that out there because it's really, really, really too common. Okay, some other reasons why you might have pain with sex. You know what's on the other side of your uterus? Well, on top of your uterus is your bladder. Then comes your uterus, then is your colon. So if you are filled up with shit, and a lot of you are, because a lot of you don't even poop every day. So a lot of you are filled up with shit. So then if you have sex, you're gonna be pushing on your colon simultaneously. So that could cause some pain. So there really are quite a few things that you can look into. And let me say, a lot of these things are going to require you to work with someone that you trust, someone that you will talk to about sex. Know that you should be able to say all these things to your doctor. And if you don't feel comfortable, first of all, that might be shame. That might be shame on your part. It's okay. It's okay. We're going to work through it. But you need to have that almost friendship level relationship with your provider, especially if you're going to be talking about this kind of stuff. Nothing should be off the table. So you want to go to your provider. And, first off, if you're having any weird type of discharge, even if you think it's just a yeast infection or BV, it's a really good idea to get that sampled and to look at it under a microscope so then you can appropriately treat it. Because what if it's not BV? What if it's gonorrhea? What if it's chlamydia? What if it's syphilis? Honestly though, babies, what if it is? So that is step one, discharge, you go to the doctor. Easy enough for them to tell you exactly what it is and to treat it. You do not want to pretend like that's not happening because again, you could get pelvic inflammatory disease and all STDs are quite easily treated if you take the medication for them. Time and a place for everything. Definitely a time and a place to treat syphilis. Definitely. So you go to the doctor, they can do that. Something else that your doctor can do is do an ultrasound of your womb because what if in your womb you have a fibroid? Or what if you have, endometriosis? Imaging will help your physician figure out and localize what is going on so you could take the appropriate path of action. I am a huge, huge fan of pelvic floor therapy because it can balance out where your womb is, where your bladder is, where your colon is. They can truly shift things around in there so that things flow easier and so that you don't have that pressure sensation, especially if it's caused by something like constipation, right? That's an easy fix. Other things that you can do to investigate and care for this womb space is test your hormones. Because if your hormones are off, going back to that lubrication piece, going back to even the health of the vaginal tissue, that will be something that will show up. So if you get your hormones tested, there's about 1,000,007 ways to treat hormone imbalances. So I highly recommend that. And if you do have something like a lubrication issue or a hormone issue or a pH issue or a microbial issue in the vagina, there's so many things that you could just stick on up there. You could stick probiotics right up your hoo-ha. You could stick hormones up your hoo-ha. I don't know why I'm calling it hoo-ha, but hoo-ha. You could do it all. So my sweet baby angels, we talked a lot about medical things that can be influencing your ability to have beautiful sex. That is one of the few pleasures on this planet that we have that is free. Food, sex, sun. Enjoy them. If you are not enjoying it, please speak with the provider that can help you. And also remember that mental health absolutely plays into your ability to feel safe and to even want to welcome someone into your world. So all of these things are interconnected. If you are looking for more information on this podcast, please subscribe. You're going to get alerts as to when these episodes come out. We have quite a few episodes that are talking about reproductive health, pelvic floor therapy, why not to put toxic things inside of your vagina, why to dump Billy, all of these things come up. Thanks for being here. And I hope that you have beautiful, pleasure-filled sexual encounters that feel safe and nourishing for you. Toodles.